The situation as it develops along the line of control where Indian and Pakistani troops are in close proximity. But for the moment, I want to throw it open and begin the center stage face-off for tonight. And I want to introduce our guests. Joining us in the studio is Colonel V.N. Thapar, father of Kargil martyr, Captain Thapar. Thank you very much for joining us. We've also got Lieutenant General Nirbhay Sharma joining us. And with us at this time from Islamabad is Air Vice Marshal Shehzad Chaudhry. Thank you very much, Air Marshal Chaudhry, for joining us on this broadcast. I want to go across first to Air Marshal Chaudhry, because by denying reality, there is here, sir, a severed head of an Indian Army soldier that's been sent back to its family. And now Pakistan, once again, as always, has gone into deep denial. Is Islamabad rubbing salt in India's wound when it denies what is obvious to the world? Here's a soldier who's been killed as a consequence of Pakistani army action, and you want the nation to believe that this is propaganda. How do you explain that, sir?
Yeah, Rahul, no, that's not the case. In fact, your reporter just mentioned that the Pakistani army also lost a couple of soldiers. One, in fact, was buried right today, Naik Aslam, while the other, Naik Wasim, is critically injured and continues to be in a very critical state. So that is what is the current reality. Now, hello? Hello?
Go on, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay, all right. Now, what I was trying to say was that it's also a fact that the Pakistani and Indian armies have exchanged fire. And it's not only when the Pakistani army fires and the Indian army responds. In fact, it goes both ways. And they've had about 75 to 80 such violations in 2012. These are not the first two soldiers you've lost. You've lost about 8 to 10 from your side and similar number from our side in these exchanges of fire between both countries. Also the fact that perhaps you have a couple of army guys there, and if you're so close to each other in an eyeball to eyeball situation, you know that a mortar round can actually, if it unfortunately hits somebody directly, can actually sever anything. So God
No, I'm sorry. Also the fact,
no, let me.
This is not about a mortar round.
Let me complete.
This is about SSG troops of the Pakistani army, Pak army regulars going and severing the head of one of our brave soldiers, sir.
Rahul, let me continue. Let me please continue. You also have about 70% of the LOC, the line of control, fenced. Now, you've also had, as a result, you've had the lowest amount of infiltration, in fact, negative infiltration in the last 5 to 7 years, where situation in Kashmir has been outstandingly quiet and peaceful and good and improving at all times. So I really do not, these things don't match up. Why would Pakistan try and do such a thing when the Pakistani military establishment and the Pakistani political establishment is working damn hard to try and improve relations with India?
I don't think that's the case,
we can move on various other things.
Pakistan is trying to do this because you've got cases against the DG ISI, which are now coming up, constantly being reported. You've got Ashfaq Parvez Kayani, whose tenure is getting to an end. There are elections happening. The Pakistani army wants to show the nation why it is important. It is escalating tensions as part of a deliberate, calibrated strategy, sir.
Oh my, no, that is entirely your opinion and your narrative. I mean, it doesn't really meet up with the narrative of many people in India as well as in Pakistan. So really, Rahul, when you make these statements, those are your statements. That is how you look at things. Not necessarily how majority of Indians or majority of Pakistanis look at this particular fact. What we are saying is that these kind of incidents have continued to happen from both sides. The Pakistani in the past.
This is not a regular instance, sir. I'm sorry, this is not a regular instance. Since 2011, there hasn't been as grave a provocation as this. A soldier of the Indian army having his head mutilated by the actions of the Pakistani army. This is a grave provocation. You cannot dismiss this as just a mortar round being fired by the Pakistani army on an Indian post.
Rahul, my dear sir, only if you let your guests speak rather than, taking most of the time yourself. What I'm trying to tell you is that the Pakistani soldiers have been butchered by Indian army in the history, in the past. This is what is accepted by the Indian military and Indian analysts. So once when you have this kind of unfortunate reality, whether it is being gouging of the eyes, whether it is being left to the elements, whether it is being deliberate sort of a severing of limbs or whatever, God knows what is happening in that area. Keep in mind that Kashmir continues to be an active insurgency, for God's sake. Look at the fact that you are fenced from all sides. You fence 70% of your border. So tell me, how can anyone actually, walk into India when you have a fenced border?
Let me bring in our Indian experts on this, sir. Allow me to bring in Lieutenant General Nirbhay Sharma first. Our guest in Pakistan says, how is it that the SSG, the Indian Army, is saying that the SSG commandos of the Pakistani Army are responsible for this? He says the border is fenced. How did they come in?
Well, it's very interesting, and I think before I comment on this, I must, through this channel, join my countrymen in paying tribute to these two martyrs who laid down their lives, and my heart goes out to their families. Having said that, I find it very strange. First of all, what we are talking about is not the exchange of fire which happens when you are locked down eyeball to eyeball for so many years in a hostile condition. This is something which is not soldierly. I think if during the exchange of fire or border incidents some casualties take place, we in uniform have to accept it. But what they have done is something which is barbaric. And I don't think anybody who understands military or weaponry would agree that a mortar round in a direct shoot can take away the head
or the mutilate the person's body.
The bodies. So, and I would like to reinforce the point of denial. I heard the Pakistani High Commissioner talking on the television. All he said was this, that we have not crossed the line of control. He didn't say a word about mutilating the body. That is point number one. The second thing, Rahul, which we must understand is that when we are talking about Pakistan, I think we must draw a distinction between the establishment and the army. And I don't think all of them, both of them are on the same page all the time. I suspect that this is an agenda pursued by Pakistan army, very myopic and totally uncivilized. Otherwise, do you think there is a case here for us to look at these two slightly separately? But there is no way that this kind of incident can be allowed to go unchecked. And I think we have to have a suitable response.
What must the suitable response be, sir? I want to bring in Colonel Thapa.
Well, first of all, I would like to explain what the Air Commodore has just said as to how the people can come.
Sir.
Air Vice Marshal.
Air Vice Marshal has just said that how these people can come when the places are wired. It's very simple. You just have a wire cutter and you cut the fence and you come inside. The weather is inclement. Well-trained troops can do this kind of a thing. So, dying and death is a part of a soldier's destiny, and one doesn't, shed many tears on it. But what is very bad, what is very vicious about it, is the manner in which the dead body is treated. A dead soldier is treated.
Oh, absolutely, and that's the point, Vice Marshal Shahzad.
So that is showing a certain degree of hostility, inbuilt hostility against all the warmth that we are trying to show.
Oh, absolutely, because on the one hand, Pakistan talks of peace. There's this whole business about Aman ki Asha, and then on the other hand, a soldier's head is severed. This is not a mortar round being fired, sir. This is pure and plain barbarism by Pakistani soldiers.
We are infantry officers sitting here.
Unfortunately, goes on both sides. The barbarism goes on from both sides.
No, can you cite to me one instance when anybody in the Indian Army has done something like this to a Pakistani soldier, sir? When the 1971 war happened, all the Pakistani soldiers of war were returned with full honor to the Pakistani army. Look at the way we are treating your soldiers, and look at what you've done.
In the 1960, listen to me. In the 1965 war and the 1971 war and so many other such instances, I'm sure many Indian soldiers died and were also captured by the Pakistani army. Did the Pakistani army ever go ahead and sever the heads or whatever of the limbs of those particular soldiers? Right. So therefore, that is what you assume, that is what you allege. What we are trying to tell you is, there was an exchange of fire that was actually artillery as well as mortar. Could you please go ahead and investigate it better? And if you don't want us to believe in what you're saying, or you don't believe in what we are saying, for God's sake, let's do a joint investigation. You have the United Nations.
You promised a joint investigation into the 2611 trial. See where that's got us. It's got us absolutely nowhere. I spoke to very senior officers in the Indian Army. There's been no artillery shelling anywhere in the Minder sector in the last several days.
You have an Anmol GIP, India, Pakistan, United Nations Military Observations Group. Please ask them to carry out joint neutral investigation in this particular matter. Why don't you agree to this kind of a thing?
No, sir.
Remember, your credibility of India is actually down the dumps as far as the Pakistani people is concerned at this moment. Simply because of the fact that the way the India has gone on to warmongering tirade since yesterday is actually disappointing for the people who are committed to
I'm sorry, people in India are outraged because of the provocation on the part of Pakistan.
We are equally outraged.
And you are saying this is warmongering.
We are equally outraged in the way that
India...
Yeah, it is warmongering. It is warmongering, and you are. Let me also
suggest you are severing the heads of our soldiers, and you are saying we are in the business of warmongering. Pakistan is warmongering through its actions.
But that is what you are saying.
Sir, there is a severe head
neutral people have
of an Indian soldier that's been sent back to his family. Which part of this is propaganda or which part of this is disputable? It's a fact, it's a reality. Pakistan is in denial.
I think you're doing a propaganda to malign Pakistan. You've been doing that for the last 12 years. You're trying to malign Pakistan into a terrorist sponsoring state as to a rogue nation simply because of the fact that you want Pakistan to continue to be embroiled in a situation. Unfortunately, that is the narrative that is being believed today in Pakistan. Pakistanis do not believe in the fact of what India states or claims. Unfortunately, unless and until we are able to create that trust amongst us, nobody is going to look at seriously
how does one develop trust?
What you want,
how does one develop trust?
Pakistanis to believe.
Vice Marshal, how does one develop trust when Pakistani army through its actions goes and severes the head of our soldier? How will trust be developed in such a case? The provocation comes from Pakistan's side.
Listen to me, Rahul, listen to me. By talking, by sharing, by jointly investigating, by waiting and not talking to the media or talking at each other, by talking to each other, not by the foreign minister going on to the NDTV or any other channel and giving interviews on the same evening, rather the two getting together to resolve matters and seeing. Remember, the DGMOs today have gotten together on this particular issue. Our foreign minister has gone on and said we are willing and we are ready for an open investigation with the Indian authorities on this one.
Let me bring in
I don't understand why doesn't
former High Commissioner to Pakistan. The Pakistani establishment is calling for a joint probe. They're saying let there be a third party probe if you want. They are convinced that they're not guilty. How do we explain to people who are in denial that the facts are indisputable, sir?
Look, this sort of behavior goes back to 1998 when Ilyas Kashmiri, I was High Commissioner at that time, when he beheaded an Indian soldier and was rewarded for it and displayed the head in Muzaffarabad. Then you had the whole thing during Kargil, which they denied, and please believe me, I have seen the horrific photographs of what happened to Captain Kalia and his patrol. The same thing has happened here. Now, Rahul, I think we should be measured in how we respond. The fact of the matter is infiltration. What is the root cause? Since 2008, infiltration has gone up. Of that, there is no denial. This results...
Absolutely incorrect.
All right.
As per Mr. Parthasarthi's own statement at various places, it is incorrect.
Since 2008, ever since General Kayani took over, infiltration numbers have gone up. And the infiltration...
Mr. Parthasarthi, you and I have met so many times since 2008 where you have made different statements.
Sorry, I've said after Musharraf left, Kayani is bad news. And I stand by that. And Kayani, it is now in this particular, last year there were some 80 odd incidents.
Correct.
Exact figures. Now, what does happen in that case is that they get covering fire. The army responds with fire, and it is a situation.
No, but this is not a regular ceasefire violation. This is a beheading by the Pakistani army of an Indian soldier.
No, you look at the whole situation, which your viewers have to understand. So this is a situation inbuilt for escalation. Pakistan is neither going to halt its assistance to the Taliban, which it wants to install in Afghanistan, nor is it going to halt its assistance for jihadis. And by Pakistan, I don't mean the Air Marshal's Air Force, which is a very gentlemanly force, but the Pakistani military, full of Islamists and radicals. Now, it is the Pakistani military. So, we don't have any contacts with the Pakistani military. The DGMOs talk, which is a formality. But the military calls the shots in Pakistan. Now, the fact of the matter is, you have to put diplomatic pressure and I would say a certain degree of greater military credibility in how you respond to infiltrations, if you're going to deal with it.
Okay, Colonel Thapar, do you believe this is a deliberate provocation on the part of the Pakistani
There's
army?
no doubt about it. There's absolutely no doubt about it, because they've always got a covering argument. I was in Uri some time ago, and right at that Amanka Setu, there was a high volume of fire from the Pakistanis. And then later on, when the talk between the two post commanders took place, they simply said, we have no control over these guys, they've come and fired. Not we. Not the regular troops are not involved. So every time it's going, they got a very good excuse to cover up any. Let us be very clear that this is a very deliberate action. This is an action by very specialized people. This is a very well planned, very well executed kind of an action, tactical action, and it has been sanctioned, cleared at some high level.
General Nirbhay Sharma, do you share that assessment that this is not just a random tactical move by the battalion commander on the ground? This has been orchestrated at the highest levels, and there's a message that the Pakistani army is sending to India.
Oh yes, there is no doubt. In fact, you asked me as to what should the army do. And not only what should the army do, what should we do as a country? First of all, as far as the army is concerned, this kind of an incident is not going to go down very well, and I'm sure in their own way, army will evolve a suitable response. I have no doubts on it, and that is something which need not be in the public domain. But having said that, please permit me to just convey a few things to Pakistan establishment and Pakistan army. Please do not be under this, continue to be in the same misperception that you were in 1965 or 1971 or during the Kargil, that Indian response will be feeble or weak. Beyond a certain point, India will respond. How would India respond now? I have heard some people saying that because both are nuclear power states, so therefore there can be no military response. Well, there are responses. It's like there are responses which need not be totally military. There are economic, diplomatic, social responses which must be given. And of course, army, as they say, is the last argument of the king, and therefore army must maintain its deterrence and its credibility.
Absolutely, because Air Marshal Shehzad Chaudhry, the question that's being asked all across India tonight is that what's the point of carrying on with this futile, rather meaningless dialogue with Pakistan, the so-called peace process? Each time you talk peace, you retaliate with 2611, you talk peace, then you butcher the heads of our soldiers. This dialogue is absolutely meaningless, sir. Why should we continue it?
Yeah, Rahul, I agree with you. I think that's a choice India must make. It really is up to India to decide whether they want to go about the way that you're saying, or they want to break out from the dialogue. I do not think that yes, I can tell you this, that the Pakistani people and the Pakistani political parties as well as the Pakistani military establishment were all committed to continuing the dialogue towards development of peace with India. But in case India feels that that is not what it wants to pursue, we have a default position in both India and Pakistan. It takes great courage to move from that default position. But if you fail, you can always fall back to the default position. So I think we seem to be failing at this moment on both sides. So
there's no failure only on one side, sir, and that's on the Pakistani side. There's been no failure, no change in intent on India's side. The provocation, make no mistake, comes from Islamabad.
But you're suggesting that India will also like to fail now on this particular cause.
Colonel Thapar, do you believe that there is need to renew and review this futile dialogue process?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. As the General said, there are various options of responses available to us. There is no point of such hostility, be it by the establishment, be it by the Lashkar and all those Taliban and all those people doing various vicious acts within the country. So therefore we have to rethink, we have to be realistic about how we go about a balanced response.
Ambassador Parthasarathi, because there are two problems. One, we are playing cricket, there's this whole Aman Ki Asha business that's happening. We invite their Interior Minister, External Affairs Minister, and then they go and butcher our soldiers. Why should we continue this dialogue?
Just a minute, Rahul. Even in times of war, countries keep in touch with each other. So there is inevitably a dialogue. We continued it through Kargil and we came through. But I go back to what the General has said. You see, international relations are not conducted by sweet talk only. There are measures which countries take which are covert, which are military, paramilitary, diplomatic, economic, the works. So talking to Pakistan or to any other neighbor is a continuing process. It will continue, it has continued through conflicts. The point is, what is the framework of that dialogue? Now, you know, when we resumed the dialogue in 2004, very clearly it came on an assurance from General Musharraf that territory under Pakistan's control would not be used for terrorism. That was an assurance given.
But that's still happening.
Just a minute. I would argue that between 2004 and 2007 under General Musharraf, an effort was made to tone it down. Kayani is a different kettle of fish. You know, his track record is well known. After he took over, not just in India, our mission in Kabul was attacked, and the Afghans gave us enough evidence as to how the ISI was involved. They killed our military attaché, they killed our political counselor, who was a colleague of mine. Now, so there is this escalating situation. We made a fatal mistake of resuming the so-called dialogue without insisting that Pakistan fulfill the assurances given by President Musharraf. Now, you have a problem now because you have a democratic establishment. I personally believe that both the People's Party and the Pakistan Muslim League would want to get out of this rut. That would leave the Pakistan army unemployed. Because if there is no tension in India, there is no Pakistan
That's the problem.
army.
That's the point I made.
Just a minute.
That's the point I made to Air Vice Marshal Chaudhary.
Now, therefore, your response has to be nuanced. It has to have a diplomatic element. You could, for example, recall the High Commissioner for Consultations, and then that becomes known worldwide of your displeasure. There are covert measures which we have been hesitant to use. There are overt measures which, as the General said, that it's best not spoken about so openly. But those are things as available to us. And I don't buy this business. Frankly, this nuclear threat does not scare me because the Pakistani generals live too well. Each of them has a dozen houses.
No, all of them have farmhouses along the LOC. You look with your binoculars across the LOC. Several of you're smiling, Air Marshal Chaudhary. But the fact is, and you know this fully well, that several of the Pakistani army generals are these big sprawling farmhouses.
In fairness, Shahzad, I must say I've enjoyed my interactions with Air Marshal, but as I said, the Air Force are bit players. The country
but let's come back to this. The army has a vested interest in escalating tensions at this time. There are elections happening. It is linked to the political narrative in Pakistan. They don't want peace with India. That's the problem, sir.
Had it not been for the tragedy involved in this, I mean, I would have really said that I'm amused as well as found it hilarious. But let's get to the point more seriously. Let me give you a counter narrative on this one. The question is being asked today in Pakistan as to why has India created a hype in this ceasefire violations from the Indian side. Why is there this warmongering that is going on the Indian side? Does that push the Pakistani army? And these are the questions left to be answered in the coming days. Does it push the Pakistani army to withdraw troops from the western border onto the eastern border because there's a likelihood of some sort of a limited war or limited action taking place there? Is it at the point of time when Afghanistan is stabilizing and perhaps most of the Afghan elements are going to go out of the Pakistani territories, tribal territories, and leave our own dirty mobs to us for us to be resolved, and that is what somebody doesn't want that to happen.
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you very frankly, the Pakistan army is running scared of fighting the Tehreek-e-Taliban, which is a monster they created. Now, therefore, it's good to have a bit of tensions on the eastern border. My point is, therefore, let's be very nuanced in our reaction. As I said, that there's a wide range of options open to us.
And those options must be exercised.
Those options must be appropriately exercised. What is appropriate will be decided by the Cabinet Committee on Security, and I am sure they will use all the elements of Indian power.
One quick question to General Nirbhay Sharma before I end. Do you think this is got to do with the Pakistani army wanting to reassert itself? It gives the nation a sense of why it's so important, which is why it's escalating tensions.
Absolutely. I suspect that Pakistan Army is not on board as far as the peace initiative is concerned, and they want to reassert
That is
their
wrong.
relevance.
That is incorrect.
And their
Because
relevance
without the
to
Pakistani
prove
army being on,
that nothing can go on without their approval. And I would also like to make a point here that in this endeavor, I think the media, particularly our own media, electronic media or the print media, while it should not go ballistic, it is very rightly maintaining this on the center stage, and we need to pursue this and strengthen the resolve of our government to be able to exercise any of the options wherever it is
the
required.
government needs to feel that people want to see action being taken.
That's
We
right.
can't have the heads of our soldiers being severed
Absolutely.
and then go and hug the next Pakistani leader who comes to us or shake his hands as if nothing really happened. That is not acceptable to the people of India. I'm going to leave it over there. Air Vice Marshal Shehzad Chaudhry for joining us from Islamabad with your perspective. General Nirbhay Sharma.